This day in sports history. It's June 30th, and on this day in 1993, it was a dramatic NBA trade on draft night. With the first pick in the 1993 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic selected Chris Webber. Webber was a 6'9" power forward who spent 2 years at Michigan as part of the Fab Five, leading the Wolverines to back-to-back championship games, but losing both years. He was a consensus All-American as a Wolverine and was the anticipated top choice by most in this draft, but the Magic had expressed interest in Anthony Penny Hardaway prior to the draft, and that actually started with Shaq. You probably remember that Shaq was in the movie Blue Chips, which also co-starred Penny Hardaway. The movie did not come out until the summer of 1994, but shooting had already wrapped by the time the 93 draft had rolled around. While shooting the movie, Shaq would play pickup games after shooting wrapped for the day, and he was amazed by the skills of what he thought was an actor playing point guard on his fictional Western University team. When he told somebody that this guy could play in the NBA, that person told him, well, that's Penny Hardaway. He plays at Memphis. So, prior to the draft, Shaq went to team management and said, I want this Anthony Hardaway on this team. You gotta get him. If you don't, I'm gone in 2 years. Well, you know who turned down a role in Blue Chips? Chris Webber. And he regretted that decision soon after.
That year there was a movie, Blue Chips, and I didn't want to be in a movie. I wanted to work and get better as a player. I just come from college on a great team. It didn't end the way that I wanted to. We lost the championship. So in my mind, it was more about grinding it out, getting ready for my next challenge. My agents, friends, family thought I was crazy for turning it down. And looking back, I may have been, because the only reason why Shaq and Penny are together is because they used to play games after filming.
Prior to the draft on this night, there was rumbling about a trade between Orlando and Golden State, but there's another piece to it, and this may have been what actually triggered it all to happen. Golden State really wanted Shawn Bradley, the 7'6" Storeman Mormon out of BYU, but Philadelphia took Bradley with the second pick. That put the trade back on the front burner, and when the Warriors took 6'7" point guard Anthony Hardaway with the third pick, that set up a very dramatic trade announcement by Commissioner David Stern.
Orlando has traded the draft rights to Chris Webber to Golden State in exchange for the draft rights to Anthony Hardaway and 3 future first-round draft picks.
Now, 32 years down the road, we know what happened in all of this. Penny and Shaq teamed up, and the Magic went to the NBA Finals in '95, but got swept by the Houston Rockets. Their two egos on the same team got to be a little too much, and Shaq booked it to LA in '96. Webber won Rookie of the Year honors with the Warriors, but he did not get along with head coach Don Nelson, and he was gone after 1 year. Now, there are a lot of what-ifs involved with this. A C-Webb-Shaq combo in Orlando would have been fun to watch. They could have kept Scott Skiles at the point instead of ditching him for salary cap space, which they used to pick up Horace Grant, and instead use Webber to play power forward and the Diesel in the middle. Then you got Penny and Tim Hardaway in the backcourt in Oakland, joining Chris Mullin, Latrell Sprewell, and that would have allowed Don Nelson to play his small ball style a little bit earlier. And just think about what could have been if the Magic had actually valued Shaq just a little bit more and managed to keep the dynamic duo of Shaq and Penny together for more than 3 seasons. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1998, the New Jersey Nets were sold to a group led by Raymond Chambers and Louis Katz, and it brought to an end the ownership of the Secaucus Seven that had owned the team since 1978 and had a history of mostly dismal performances on the court in the years that they actually made the playoffs, bowing out in the first round. They also struggled financially, but it was also the end to one of the more innovative marketing minds in the league. As mediocre as the team was, they still drew pretty decently. In the 90s, the Nets owners brought in John Spoelstra, and if that name sounds familiar, he is Eric Spoelstra's dad. Well, John had some ideas, some good, some not so good, and one that was so completely off the wall it might have worked if it had been approved, and that's the one I'm going to talk about here. When you think about it, the nickname Nets, there's just not much to it, right? It's bland, boring, and unless you are or were a Nets fan, merchandise was not exactly flying off the shelves. The Nets ranked toward the bottom of the league in merchandise sales year by year. Well, Spoelstra wanted to change that, and though it may have sounded like a Double-A baseball team, he came up with the idea to change the name for the Nets to the Swamp Dragons. He said, "Dragons can be a nice thing that kids love. Dragons are in every place. It could be ferocious, it could fly, it's got fire coming out of its mouth, it's got a lot of great things." So Spoelstra developed the logo with new colors. Teal and purple were big in the 90s, and that would have been the new color scheme for the Swamp Dragons. He took the idea for a name change to NBA Commissioner David Stern, who was not so enthused by the new name. In fact, Stern told him, "This is the dumbest idea you have ever come up with," but also told him that if the 7 owners were on board with it, they could proceed. Spoelstra sold the idea for the name change to Swamp Dragons to the 7 owners by telling them they would be at the top of the list for merchandise sales for years, and they all gave him the thumbs up. The next step was to take it before the NBA Executive Committee, which included 11 other team owners. The owner of the LA Lakers at the time was Jerry Buss, who said, "I love it. I'd love to do this in LA. The Lakers, there's no lake in LA, but we won something. We won the championship. We can't do it. You guys have done nothing but stunk all these years. That'd be a good idea for you to change your name." Another wholehearted approval. The New Jersey Swamp Dragons were one step closer to becoming a reality. All that was left was really a formality to get the other teams to sign off on it. They'd never gone against the executive committee at any point in the past. The league spent $500,000 protecting the name Swamp Dragons. It was going to happen until it didn't. Spoelstra got a call from a fuming David Stern who wanted to know what was going on in New Jersey. Spoelstra was a bit dumbfounded and inquired what he meant. Stern said the league had voted 25-1 in favor of the name change. "Great," said Spoelstra, "just needed a majority." But then Stern said the one dissenting vote for the name change was from your New Jersey Nets. Apparently, one of the 7 of the Secaucus 7 got scared to change the name, and Stern was not about to go against ownership of the team attempting to change its name, and the whole thing died at that moment. New Jersey had defeated itself, and the Swamp Dragons drifted back into the mist, never to be heard from again. It could have saved the team from being sold on this day, but then again, the only time the franchise has made the NBA Finals was under the Chambers and Katz ownership group, losing to the Lakers in 2002 and the Spurs in 2003. On this day in 1984, it was the longest game ever played in professional football history. This was the second year of the USFL, and it featured the Los Angeles Express with Steve Young at quarterback, taking on Bobby Hebert and the Michigan Panthers in a divisional playoff game. Michigan led 21-13 with a little over a minute to play in this one. Young led the Express down the field to score a touchdown and then forced overtime with a scrambling 2-point conversion, showcasing what he would later do in the NFL.
Mel Gray and Tony Bodie in the setbacks. Long count, fake to Bodie. The corner is open for Young. 5, touchdown, extra point, 2-point conversion. It's all Steve Young.
Michigan's kicker Novo Boyevich had 2 chances to end this game a lot earlier, but he missed a 37-yarder in the first OT and a 36-yarder in the second OT. Instead, it was the Express and another future NFL guy, Mel Gray, who finally ended this one in the third overtime.
This is the give inside again to Gray. Gray, side step, outside, 5, to the 3, touchdown Los Angeles! over.
Gray's 24-yard touchdown run ended the longest professional football game in history at 93 minutes 33 seconds, which is 10 minutes 53 seconds longer than the NFL's longest game, played on Christmas Day 1971 between Miami and Kansas City. Gray went on to a 12-year career in the NFL, mostly with the Detroit Lions. Of course, Steve Young went on to play 15 years in the NFL, spending a few years in Tampa before moving to San Francisco. And Panthers QB Bobby Hebert played 11 years in the league with New Orleans and Atlanta. On this day in 1905, Nap Lajoie nearly died because of his socks. And there's a good chance there is a generation of baseball players who may not know what I'm talking about when I say sanitary socks and stirrups. Now, most major leaguers, college players, high schoolers, little leaguers wear their pants all the way down to their shoe, and there's no need for extra socks or a stirrup. There are some who wear baseball pants that stop just below the knee, but the vast majority of those guys are wearing a combo stirrup sock. Any player who still wears the stirrup over a thin sanitary sock is doing it as a style choice and a nod to baseball history. For me, growing up playing baseball, sanitary socks and stirrups were always part of the uniform. I never knew why you needed two socks or why they were part of the uniform, and I never asked. It was just what your coach told you to buy at the local sporting goods store, and you wore them in combo. Well, there is an actual reason beyond style for the two socks, and it goes back to what happened on this day in 1905. Napoleon Larry Lajoie, better known as Nap, was sidelined with an infection in his leg. He was playing with Cleveland at the time and chasing his fifth straight batting title until his injury kept him out of the lineup. A few days earlier, Nap, playing his customary second base, had taken a spike to the calf from a hard-sliding base runner. The metal spike likely sharpened to a razor's edge cut through his red socks. Now, at this point, players wore one wool sock on each leg and not a combination of two. And when you think about baseball team nicknames, like the Red Sox, or Cincinnati was the Redlegs and Chicago was the White Sox, hosiery was a signifier for the team. Well, these socks in the early part of the 20th century were not color fast, meaning the dye used to color the basic sock could run or bleed when it got wet. The dyes were mostly made from natural sources, so when the socks got wet and ran, a little bit of whatever was in the dye went with it. Well, the cut to Lajoie's leg allowed dye from his sock to seep into his wound. If he would have treated it immediately or not completely ignored it, what happened next and the revolution in baseball socks may never have taken place. But Lajoie did mostly ignore it, and the cut became infected. On this day, he was diagnosed with blood poisoning, with the cause attributed to the dye in his sock. It caused Lajoie to miss 65 games in the 05 season and subsequently lose the batting title. And so to protect the players from these dyes, players began wearing these thin, white, undyed sanitary socks as the base layer. But adding that wool-colored sock on top of that was hot and cumbersome, and so the stirrup was implemented to keep the color scheme of the uniform while also allowing your shoes to fit. The sanitary sock was a protective layer from these harmful dyes seeping into cuts. Why didn't they just make the pants longer? Well, one, it could have been that uniforms were made out of wool at this point, and adding more wool during the summer would just make them warmer. But two, the cuffed pants just below the knee showed the guy's calves, which apparently was a measure to draw ladies to the ballpark. We're just a week removed from this year's College World Series, where Coastal Carolina came close to winning their second national title. Let's go back to this day in 2016 when they shook up the college baseball world, winning their first. The Chanticleers were not the biggest long shots to ever win at all, but they were pretty close. Coastal, at this point in their history, represented the Big South Conference, and they started out as a 2 seed in the regionals, worked their way to Omaha, lost to TCU in a second-round game there, falling into the losers bracket, but they fought their way into the 3-game championship series against Arizona. The Wildcats won the first game of the 3-game series. Coastal evened the series with a 5-4 win in Game 2. And now here on the 30th, Coastal clung to a 4-3 lead with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. But the Wildcats had men on 2nd and 3rd, and the drama and the tension were high. The national title was on the line with this pitch.
3-2 coming to Ryan Hogg. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship.
At plus 2,500 prior to the tournament starting, they fall well short of Ole Miss at plus 6,500, winning it all in 2022 as the biggest long shot. But being from the Big South Conference and not a member of a power conference, it made them a true Cinderella story. Just a few hours after winning the national title, Coastal Carolina announced that they were moving all of their sports to the Sun Belt Conference. And on this day in 1929, in what might go down as a just-ended-already moment, golfer Bobby Jones won his 3rd U.S. Open championship in a playoff. Jones had been in control of the tournament, up 4 with 3 to play in the final round, until a triple bogey finish dropped him into a tie with Al Espinosa. At this point in time, they played a 36-hole playoff to decide the winner. Not 1, not 3, not even 18, but 36 holes. They probably could have decided it after a few holes and called it a day. Certainly after the first 18 when Jones led by 12 shots. He ended up 23 shots better than Espinosa by the end of the day. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. Chronologically speaking, Cleopatra lived closer to us than the construction of the Great Pyramids.
Say what?
It's kind of hard for us to fathom how long the ancient Egyptian civilization lasted, but the pyramids were built more on the front end, while Cleopatra was closer to the end of it. The largest of the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza were built around 2500 BCE, and the smaller ones were built about 100 years later. Cleopatra's reign began in 51 BCE, so there's a little more than 2,400 years separating the pyramids and her, while there's a little less than 2,100 years between her and us. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.